Let's get right into it, because if you told me 2 years ago that I'd be the reason 50 rich folks were screaming at a chain boat ramp while the local news filmed the whole mess, I'd have laughed you off my dock. But here we are. Diesel fumes hanging thick, angry customers clutching their useless dinner reservations, and Vivian Blackstone Seattle transplant, self-declared queen of the HOA, screaming that I'm destroying her business. I just leaned on the gate, coffee in hand, and watch her empire unravel right in front of God and the local Channel 4. But maybe I ought to back up so you can see how a quiet life on a Montana lake got swallowed up by greed, fake sophistication, and one woman's hunger for power. Name's Garrett Holloway. I'm 58, retired after 30 years at Boeing. Truth be told, I thought the hardest decision in my future would be whether to open a bait shop or just fish all day with my grandkids. My family's held this land since my grandfather bought 40 acres of lakefront back in 1952, 300 feet of water, so clear you can see the trout flash under the dock at dawn. That dock, he built it with his own hands. For generations, learned to fish off that wood. Every memory that matters is tied up in these pines and rippling mornings, steam rising from a tin mug, the loons calling, dock planks frosty under my boots. Some things you figure will never change. My wife, Sarah, she made this place magic. For 20 years, she ran the Memorial-based Derby, every summer 15 families at the start, a whole town by the end, kids catching their first fish, old-timers swapping stories, everyone welcome. After she passed, I kept it going for her, and every cast brings her right back beside me. Now, there's one thing Grandpa did that still makes me proud. Saw how the world was changing, how money creeps in, and he made sure his deed granted lake access in perpetuity for local families, plus a public boat ramp, smack on our land. 60 years before any HOA even existed, that ramp was there for folks to use. It was meant to be shared, not sold. But then Vivian blew in from Seattle, wrapped in cashmere and fake smiles. She's the kind that'll tell you she's here to help, while her eyes size up your property value. 6 weeks in town, and she's running for HOA president, promising economic vitality and modern amenities. First move, she bans fishing from the HOA shoreline, claims it's an eyesore. Next, she gripes about undesirable elements, using the water anybody who doesn't look like a magazine ad for resort living. Then she unveils her real plan, a floating restaurant right on our lake. $45 entrees, valet boat parking, a $15 launch fee at my family's ramp. She clicks through PowerPoint slides, voice dripping with that condescension folks use when they want you to know they went to college out of state. When I point out the ramp is on private property, she cuts me off. Sometimes progress requires tough decisions, Garrett. She hits me with that smile, the kind the rich save for people who park their cars. Meeting ends with her icy glare stuck on me like pine sap. The next Monday, the noise starts at 5 a.m. semi-trucks, cranes, concrete mixers. It's like someone declared war on peace and quiet. By Wednesday, the once clear water is cloudy with runoff, loons driven off by hydraulic winds. I file a complaint about the noise. The county says Mrs. Blackstone has all permits. That's when I realize she's got more connections than I do fishing rods. But Vivian makes a rookie mistake. In her rush, she skips a key environmental permit. 40 years of engineering taught MEP paperwork buries more projects than protesters ever will. I call the state's anonymous tip line, mention illegal construction and possible water contamination. Inspector shows up, work stops cold. The silence, after all that racket, is pure music. Pine scent returns, loons too. Vivian storms over, red-faced, waving a cease and desist order. I sip my coffee, tell her, just concerned about our lake. She threatens, swears, tears out in her Tesla, gravel flying. Neighbors start stopping by. Chuck, the old Vietnam vet who runs the coffee shop, brings breakfast. That woman's been trouble since she arrived, he mutters. Even some on the HOA start grumbling. No one's seen a real financial plan for her vision. But Vivian's not backing down. Suddenly, her permits get fast-tracked. Security guards show up at the site, carrying more hardware than sense. Then she files harassment complaints now. I've got a file at the sheriff's office. Calls a meeting, spins a story about me obstructing progress. She wants me fined $500. The motion passes. But here's the twist. She claims my boat ramp is community property by adverse possession. She's betting no one in the room knows what that means. What she doesn't realize is me families used and maintained that ramp all along. Adverse possession doesn't hold water. But that night, I find fresh boot prints around the survey markers. Expensive boots, not work boots. Somebody's been poking around, trying to figure out how to make a legal grab for my land. So I bring in Martinez Land Surveying. GPS confirms that ramp is 100% Holloway. I put up new private property signs. Vivian tears them down, then calls Adult Protective Services, says I'm losing it mentally. My daughter gets a call, worried. That's when it hits Medhis is more than a restaurant. It's a power grab. Meanwhile, Vivian goes full PR, newspaper ads, social media, investor parties. She installs an electronic gate, charges $25 to use the ramp. Only her business license lists my home address. That's fraud, pure and simple. I see Chuck's grandson, 12 years old, turn away from fishing. Mrs. Petrosky, 79, can't scatter her husband's ashes. This isn't progress, it's a shakedown. That night, I dig through the deed, discover riparian rights. Turns out, I own 50 feet into the lake bed. Vivian's floating restaurant? Anchored on my property, too. My lawyer nearly laughs her whole business sits on stolen land. But the real bombshell is the $400,000 loan she took out, using HOA assets as collateral. No one voted, no one knew. If she defaults, the pool, the clubhouse, the tennis court's gone. Winter's coming, and her numbers don't add up. She needs the restaurant packed every week just to survive. But without my ramp, she's got nothing. Time to act. I hired Jake Reeves, ex-Marine, to install a commercial-grade hydraulic gate. Solar-powered, tamper-proof, steel-reinforced, nothing gets through without my say. I pull neighbors in, spread out the paperwork, show them the fraud. What do you need? Tom asks. Witnesses, I say. We're taking this public. They're in. Friday, the gate goes up. 5 p.m., dinner rush. Cars stack up, BMWs, Teslas, all blocked out. Vivian loses it. Kicks, screams, tries to bribe Tom to let boats in elsewhere. She calls in fake social workers, doesn't stick. When Richard, her husband, discovers the HOA loan, the real fireworks start. Emergency meetings, talk of divorce, lawsuits flying. She sues me for malicious interference, but Judge Morrison sees through it, case dismissed. Her attorney walks out. Vivian, cornered, tries to buy out other docs, no dice. Bribes the commissioner, gets nowhere. At 3 a.m, tries to ram the gate with her boat, trailer hydraulics hold. Staff walk out, unpaid for weeks. Local paper runs an exposes everything: embezzlement, unpaid wages, fake adverse possession. The restaurant's done. The bank forecloses. Social media lights up, but small-town folks know each other too well for fake news to work. Team Garrett starts trending. The whole community rallies. Thursday night, the biggest town hall we've ever seen. Vivian shows up with lawyers, but when I lay out the evidence, loans, property surveys, security, footage, the room turns. Then Detective Morrison steps up. Mrs. Blackstone, you're under arrest for embezzlement, bribery, fraud, destruction of private property. The handcuffs echo like justice ringing through the crowd. Next morning, the gate comes down. Jake's crew removes every bolt. By noon, kids are fishing off the dock again. The lake is ours. Vivian pleads guilty, 18 months in state prison, $50,000 restitution. Her husband files for divorce. Their Seattle properties on the auction block. The floating restaurant towed away by the bank. Betty Sterling becomes interim HOA president. Immediately calls for the HOA to dissolve. We need neighbors, not management, she says. The base derby returns, bigger than ever. raising scholarships in Sarah's name. My bait shop opens, and the community is whole again. We even get recognized as a model for property rights. Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks partners with us for education and conservation. And here's the thing, the real lesson that crept up on Mepware only wins when people let themselves get pushed around. If you stand together, know your rights, document everything, and don't back down, even $1 million can't take your memories, your land, or your peace. Sometimes you don't realize how strong your roots run until someone tries to rip them out. So now, every evening I sit on my dock, coffee in hand, loons calling, and think Sarah would be proud. Grandpa too. The lake is quiet again, the way it should be. But let me ask you, where do you draw the line between progress and protecting what matters? When does someone's vision turn into theft? And how far would you go to defend your legacy? Drop a comment, share your own HOA battles, and tell me where you're watching from. Because trust me, you never know when the fight for your little piece of heaven might land on your doorstep.